Provocative bus ads in Edmonton, but surely one's personal provocation is another person's freedom of speech. Human rights in Alberta, we discuss. Now, Edmonton Transit decided last year that some ads sponsored and purchased by Pamela Geller were just too offensive to Muslims and they were unacceptable. Well, now the case is going to the courts. Pam Geller was on The Source earlier today. Here's what she had to say about it.
In Canada, we see that helping Muslim girls is considered racist. And increasingly, these restrictions on speech in the U.S. too, and Canada, is a devastating blow to our freedoms.
Now, you can catch the full interview later tonight at 10 Eastern. Meanwhile, civil rights lawyer John Carpay, a very good guy, joins us from Calgary. John, before we started here, I teased you and I said, oh, Pam Geller's champion. And you quite rightly said, no, the champion of free speech. I think that's what the issue is about. It's not about Pamela Geller. It's not even about Islam. It's about freedom of speech.
Indeed it is, and it's important in a free society that no group, and that would mean not gays and lesbians, not Muslims, not anti-Israeli apartheid activists, no group is exempt from criticism. And once we allow any group to start dictating that certain things can't be said because it's offensive to that group, you no longer have free expression in Canada.
Now, let me be, as it were, devil's advocate. No, let me rephrase that. Let me be an advocate for the vast majority of Muslims who are appalled by honor killings and so on. They might argue, hey, you seem to be throwing this ugly net over all of us, and most of us would never dream of such a thing. We're loving families, we love our children, and it makes us look bad. And isn't there a more delicate way of going about this? How would you respond to that?
There might be a more delicate way of going about it, but you get back to the same issue that if the government, and in this case, government entity of Edmonton Transit and indirectly the city of Edmonton, if they start to say, well, you're allowed to have a message, pro-life message or message against honor killings or message against Israeli foreign policy or domestic policy, but you have to temper it down into a less offensive way of saying it. If government has that power, then that's just not compatible with free expression rights. If the state says, well, we won't censor you entirely, but we'll order you to to tone it down.
If an ad is calling for direct violence, if it's being purposefully abusive, that's one thing. But what this ad is doing, in many ways, could be, and if you have a look at it now, there's an argument to say this is a public service because there are several examples in this country of young women who have been, well, they've been murdered, they've been beaten, they're victimized within a family that is invariably Muslim, that doesn't support their way of life and their attitudes and the person they're dating or the way they are dressing. Now, I've said this many times, I do know this subject. Honor killing and so on, they're not exclusive to Islam, but the epicenter of honor killings is Pakistan. It's overwhelmingly an issue that does concern Islam, and many of the greatest opponents of it are other Muslims who are aware of it. So we can't pretend any longer.
Well, it's true that the majority of honor killings are committed in Muslim families, and it's also true that it's not something that's limited to Muslims. But we have to be able to have a frank and honest dialogue about this, and I sympathize with I sympathize with Muslims who would say, look, the ads are offensive to Islam generally, but even if they are, if the honor killings taking place in Canada and around the world, if most of those are done in Muslim families, it's not unfair for an ad to say so.
What's going to happen here? You're suing the city of Edmonton, I suppose, indirectly. It's Edmonton Transit.
Yes, the application won't be heard until February of 2015, and the healthcare system's not the only place where you have long waiting lists. There's only one court system, and so that's just par for the course. This is not the type of application you could just walk into court with on 5 days' notice and get an order immediately. It's called a special application. It's more substantive. It's going to be heard in February of 2015, and sometime thereafter we'll get a decision.
What do you think?
We've got a strong case. I've always said anybody who predicts a court outcome is a fool, so I make no predictions, but I will definitely say that based on the Supreme Court's rulings, based on the fact that bus advertisements are a public space and government has no right to censor there, we certainly have a strong case going forward.
And I'll say again, you've been very consistent in this because although obviously you have a political opinion and you're a Christian, you're a conservative, you've gone to bat for people who I know you don't agree with. You believe that they have a right to express certain opinions even if you find them unsavory.
The Justice Centre is pro-free speech.
I'm not hearing you right now. I think we've got a bit of an audio problem. But anyway, John, as always, it's a great pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having me on your show.